Hello. Hey, resume queen. How you making out
Oh,
today?
wonderful. I can't complain. How about yourself?
I am doing well. Good evening to all of our followers on the couch. We're excited to talk to you today. We have a great topic today. We have a guest that's coming on, and we'll introduce her shortly. But you know what I want to talk about today is some current events that are is really shocking to me. Like three things. First thing is, did you hear about the mother that shot both of her boys?
Briefly, I have a little knowledge on it. Help elaborate on the story so we can
Yes, I
yeah.
will. I will. See, this is one of those stories where is this a mental health issue? What happened to this lady? It's making me think about that. So this lady is, I believe her first name is Trin Wynn. Wynn is the last name. She had a two sons, 9 and 13 years old. No one knows why she did what she did, but she actually, the two boys were found shot in their beds in the head.
Terrible.
They ended up taking her to jail. And not only after she had shot the boys, she had went next door to her next door neighbor and attempted to shoot the neighbor too.
Oh,
But the
yeah.
neighbor was able to grab her and grab the gun, but was able to call the police on her. I start thinking, what was it that could have possibly triggered this woman to do something as horrific as that? Because we're talking about shooting two innocent kids.
A psychotic episode, it sounds like.
Yeah,
It sounds like
yeah,
she went on a rampage.
yeah,
Uh it had to be mental illness to take your children's life, attempt to take the neighbor's life, and she probably was going to turn the gun on herself at the end.
yes, yes,
Just the pressure, since COVID, a lot of people are suffering with mental
yes.
illness. It has skyrocketed. So I'm not saying I
Mhm.
don't know the whole story, but it could have been the pressures of everything just collapsed on her and she had a
Yeah.
psychotic episode.
And that's what I believe. Coming from that world of mental health and working with a lot of mental health patients, people that are coming in, and you're exactly right. These numbers have skyrocketed when it comes to people looking for someone now to talk to. Because when you're at home and you're at your own devices, you might snap because you're realizing who you might really be, or who am I really?
Mm,
Who do I like myself? Who am I? And maybe she was questioning, is she a good mother?
wow.
You
Yeah.
know?
It's unfortunate she didn't reach out and get the help, call
Yeah.
crisis when she started having those thoughts to
Yeah.
take herself out of it. But
Yeah.
it's tragic for the whole family.
It is. It's tragic for the whole family. And, unfortunately, she will be incarcerated for that. And during her incarceration, I just, plead that she gets mental help while she's in there. And the thing is, when she does come out of her psychotic shock,
That's what I was
she's
going
going
to
to
say.
realize
Ooh,
what she did. And
yeah,
that's where it's going to be very detrimental to
the
her,
grief. Yeah,
because
grief.
she
Yeah.
probably would have never thought she would do something like that. It's unfortunate.
Mm,
And in addition, because we're talking about mental health, Naomi Judd, she,
yes.
that was sad.
Yeah, and this is a woman who was extremely successful. That is a demonstration that money,
Mm-hmm.
wealth, uh,
Mm-hmm.
celebrity does
Yes.
not protect your mental health. None of that protects. It can't. You still have to be in the world. So it's a sad story. She was an older woman, so those
Yes.
those demons really plagued her to where she took her own life, and
Mm-hmm.
extremely successful, but it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't good enough. Mental health is very serious.
It is very serious. So just a little background on her too. You talked about, how successful she was, but with the success came with her mental illness was depression. So
Mm.
she even wrote a book about it,
Oh, wow.
about how you can heal from depression. But if we think about her healing, she had probably some point of healing, but it's not getting away from that same fact of that suicidal thought.
Mm.
She couldn't escape that thought of, am I good enough?
Yes. Yeah. And that's the question that we all ask ourselves.
Mhm. Yeah.
Oh, am I good enough? Am I valued? But
Mhm.
if we get to that breaking point, I employ everyone who's listening to us. If you have those feelings, seek help. Seek help. You are not
Yes.
alone. There's people out there. There's 800 numbers that can help you.
Yes, it is. I agree. Seek help. Here's a quote from her book, and I just want to discuss that briefly. She said, people who commit suicide are experiencing problems with mood, impulse control, and aggression, all of which involve discrete circuits in the brain that regulate these aspects of human experience. But we still don't understand how these circuits go haywire in the brain of suicide victims.
So she already had an intellectual perspective and understanding of it, but still the chemical imbalance when we are out of alignment with our mental state, it's still wow. I know her children. Praise God to her daughters and her family, because I know they're probably in shock. But she even wrote about it, and
She wrote about it.
it's
She wrote
still
about
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yes.
That was probably her way of dealing with it, cleansing it, trying to work through it.
Yes. Yes. That was the way she was coping. Yes.
Mhm.
Those who are following us, our listeners, those that are seeing us by video, we're going to plead to you all. If you know someone that's suffering from depression, really try to interact as much as possible, because yes, you'll have the people that will shut all the way down, but you need to try to reach out and don't give up, because sometimes they don't know where to turn or who to talk to. But when you open that door, or they know that door is something, they can turn that knob and walk through the door, they're going to come and they're going to tell you what's going on. And listen, you don't necessarily have to give answers, but the listening part is important.
Mhm.
And then you can say, I'll go with you to your first therapy session. That means a lot to a person that's afraid of
Mhm.
therapy. They don't know what it is, why they walking in to this therapist's office, and they don't, these are strangers. I don't want to tell my business. And I'm saying this to our Black and brown community. We have learned to keep our business to ourselves, that don't let it out of the house. But these things we got to let out of the house. Mental health is serious. We cannot push it under the rug,
No.
because this is what happens. I don't think her daughters push anything under the rug, but she got to a place where she just said, I am no good. It's time for me to go.
Mhm.
Can you stop a person from committing suicide? Let's be very clear. You
You can't.
can't.
You can't. Even if you stop them, then they'll figure out a way to do it later.
Yes, they will. Yes,
But
they will.
as you were saying, for our community, mental health, we can no longer afford to make it taboo. We
Yes.
have to address it. We
Yeah.
have to deal with it as a community. If you need help, don't be ashamed. We all have struggles. Seek
Yeah.
help.
Yes, seek help. We can't employ this enough. We can't say it. We'll say it a million times on every single show we have. The importance of taking
Yeah.
care of your mental state. If you are out of alignment, you better believe you're not going to be able to take care of yourself or no one else. So don't think you can. If you are saying to yourself, you're looking in that mirror and you're saying, first thing you say is, who am I? What value am I bringing to myself and other people? Get some
Mhm.
help. Okay, because you need to get back to a whole person. And when you're scattered, and it happens to everybody, none
Yeah,
of us are perfect, just find that, dig deep and say, I need help. It's not an embarrassment. You may feel shame at first, but when you go, you will feel the relief. And that's what you should be looking for,
it's
the
the most
relief.
courageous thing you can do for yourself.
It
Is
it
to say,
is.
I'm not well. I know
Yeah,
it's vulnerable, but in that space is where the other side of healing is, when you're able to say that.
that's right. And it sure is. It's the other side. And a part of healing too is making choices, like Road versus Wade. This is bothering me a lot as a woman,
Mhm.
that men are making decisions on what women should do with their bodies.
Mhm.
There are some women that have been sexually assaulted and a pregnancy comes out of it. There are some women who don't want children, and doesn't mean that that's what they use, the method they use to go abort the pregnancy. But if it does happen by mistake, they have a choice.
Yes.
We can't be told what to do with our bodies. There are some pregnancies that can kill you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, because the embryo is just not viable to the body. Therefore, that embryo becomes a foreign object, and then the person becomes ill. You don't know what pregnancy can do to a woman. If you've never, as a man, you would have no idea what that feels like.
Right.
No idea.
I just feel like, you know, you hear a lot of people, the language pro life, pro life, pro life.
Mhm.
But on the same token, when women have the children and they're struggling financially, they take away these programs and
Yes.
financial assistance to help them.
Mhm.
So are you really pro life? Because that's life. The life is here now. But then now you're taking away programs that can provide assistance for the mother, the single mother, until she get herself together. So the pro life angle, I'm not really buying it. And I think to make laws to control a woman's body is just really, I can't believe that in 2022 we're still having this discussion, something from 50 years
Yes.
ago, that
Yes.
women, they feel the right to demand and make laws on our bodies, so to take our choices away.
Yes, yes. And I happened to watch the I think it was Good Morning America, and it was an African American woman on there, and she was talking about at the age of 15, she recalls this law being written and put into law.
Mm.
And she said exactly what you said. She said, "Why are we here again 50 years later? Again, isn't there other things that's going on, like homelessness,
Hunger, poverty.
hunger, poverty?
Yes.
We have veterans that are sleeping under bridges, and you are worried about the reproductive system of a woman.
Makes no sense.
It makes no sense to
Yeah.
me. And you can't even, I don't know who can justify why they're sitting there worried about what a woman is going to do to their body.
Well, they use religion as a gateway to say, it's murder. It's murder.
Mm-hmm.
That's their catalyst for their excuse. Women, at this point, when they're trying to change this law, they should be protesting all these women groups.
Yeah.
It has to be. It can't go through. I don't know if they finalized it. They said the decision is going to come out, I think, in July or June. The final decision, it was leaked, but hopefully with the pressure from our nation and the women groups and everybody, it won't go through, because it's just it's ridiculous.
It is. It's ridiculous. I think it's insensitive.
Yes.
You don't care about the women's needs, because if we were to walk around and say all men need to be, their privates need to be just cut off, what would that look like? Let's sterilize all of the men. Okay, let's do that. All the men should have a vasectomy. What would they say?
Yeah. Well, it like you said, a man has no right to make decisions and laws on a woman's body. Zero.
Right.
None. None. Why? Like
Exactly.
you said, all these major issues we got
Mm-hmm.
running rampant, social ills in our country.
Yes.
The one thing they've been fixated on this for years, for years.
Exactly. So, you know, as women, ladies, we got to stand up for our wounds. We got younger people behind us, younger women. They're going to grow up and they're going to choose to have children or not. It is their right to do so, and I think that's very important. And then when we got to start looking at how this affects us in a mental health way. So tonight, we have a guest tonight, and her name is Amber Benzinger. And Amber, I'm gonna just give a little bit of background about her and the topic we're going to be talking about tonight. So she is a licensed professional counselor and certified in clinical trauma. So this is going to be very interesting tonight.
Oh, I love it.
And her goals is to create environment for women so they can have a space to talk about their trauma, talk about the things that are bothering them, what they feel like. But the ultimate goal is to help them grow in the healing process so they can see self-compassion, their self-worth, which is great. It's awesome to, that she's looking at just growth. And that's important. Just like you do, Resume Queen, you help people with growth. I help people with growth, and so is she. And when she's not in the therapy chair, she does have two children. She's a mom, she's a wife. She enjoys running. She loves French bulldogs. As far as her education, she has a bachelor's in science in psychology and a master's degree in mental health counseling. And what's also awesome about her is that she has training also, certified clinical trauma professional, and she has an expertise in cognitive behavioral therapy. Amber, welcome to On the Couch. We are looking forward to
Yeah.
you talking about our topic tonight about anxiety and how this affects the Black and Brown community. So we're going to have you take it away.
Yeah.
Thank you
Well,
so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And what a great time to talk about this as it's, Mental Health Awareness Month. And we're just seeing such a rise in anxiety, in the Black and Brown community. Anxiety is really prevalent, but what you see the most is post-traumatic stress disorder because there is so much trauma, right?
yeah.
So then we have these symptoms of anxiety that go along with it. And I feel like a lot of people don't even know that that is anxiety, right? Because it comes out it could come out in this like angry way, or it could come out in this overthinking way. And we're not really sure. And we just kind of push through because there's that whole strong black woman persona that a lot of people will take on, or it's projected onto us by society. So it's like, am I anxious? Like, I don't even have time to figure out what that is. And then how is it affecting me in the way that I want to show up in my life, in the way that I'm communicating with my family, my community. So it's an important topic that I want people to kind of take a step back and be like, oh wait, is this affecting me?
Mm-hmm. So can you define anxiety? What is that?
Yeah. So everybody has anxiety. I feel like there's a lot of people that are like, I can kind of cure it. And that's just not a thing. Everybody has anxiety. Anxiety is like your body's smoke alarm, right? Like it's telling you that there's some type of danger. So like when you're driving and you need to stop because someone stopped short. So like that is what anxiety is. Now, when it becomes like something that we need to take a step back, maybe it's an anxiety disorder or something that we need to take a look at, is where those thoughts are kind of taking over your everyday, your day to day, the way that you're showing up. You're kind of living in this fear, in this sense of overwhelming um, uh, thoughts. You're having these running rumination and you can't kind of get out of it. And it's starting to affect how you're showing up in all other areas of your life.
Yes. So the running thoughts, if you can give us an example of what a running thought would sound like in a person's head.
Yeah. So say your boss emails you at 2 o'clock in the afternoon saying they want to see you at 5 o'clock. And you're like, I'm going to get fired. What is this about? Like, I know I did that wrong. I know, Susan over here told on me that I took a 5 minute extra lunch break. Like, so like we're having the thoughts are just like compiling upon each other. And it's usually in a negative way, right? It's like, we go to our worst case scenario. We kind of like jump to conclusions. There's assumptions. It's a lot of negativity and just kind of keeps replaying over and over, building upon itself.
Yes. So for the Black and Brown community, we historically have a lot of complex trauma, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of it is passed down to us from one generation to the next. And when we're looking at anxiety as a whole, but let's look at complex trauma so we can kind of tell, our listeners what is complex trauma so they can have a better understanding of that.
Yeah. So when we think of trauma, we kind of think of like where it's, something big, like a soldier coming back from war or like death, but it doesn't have to be that way. You
Mhm.
know, what's traumatic for me might not be traumatic for you. It's how we're interpreting it and taking it on and how it's affecting us in our daily ways and how we're showing up. So if trauma's kind of compounded upon each other, like say you grew up in a home where there was limited resources and you didn't have food or things that you needed, and your mom grew up that way too, and then she has anxiety, so it's all like compounding on each other, right? And we just have this one thing on top of the next thing on top of the next thing. um yeah, that's where it can just like build up and might not even be something that we realize, because it might just be like our normal everyday, like, oh, we're always in survival mode. But does that
Mm-hmm.
have to be like that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So some
Mm-hmm.
people could be completely unaware that they even experience it because it's their norm, it's their normal environment, normal behavior. So they just neutralize to it.
Exactly. I have a lot of women that come into my practice that'll be like, oh, that wasn't normal. It wasn't normal that my parents were always fighting. It wasn't like, that was traumatic for me. It wasn't, that wasn't normal that I had to like go live with my grandparents and no one talked to me about what happened to my mom because she was on drugs. Like yeah, those things are traumatic, and then those build off of, because like, did you have that sense of safety and security and sense of being loved and what that was like as a child? So how you know how to do that as an adult?
Right.
Yes, yes. I can share that with you when it comes to clients. They are totally oblivious to the fact that their environment influences how they react out into
Mhm.
society. So,
Mhm.
yes, if I see a lot of things in my home, and yes, it's normalized in my home, but then I go and talk to you and you say, wait a minute, let's look at this and dissect this. You get an opportunity to really see that is an abnormal type of behavior, and you're always probably in fight mode.
Mm-hmm.
you know I actually had that last night where I was talking to someone, and she didn't realize she was mimicking the same exact behavior because she was in fight mode all the time. So anxiety is a big part of who she is. It
Yeah.
make her up. So for us, it's very complex. This is why I was asking about defining that. So when you look at the effects of anxiety, how does that couple with trauma?
Yeah, so a lot of times if we have trauma, if we have some type of traumatic experience, that can cause a lot of anxiety, right? That can be a lot of, am I good enough? Overthinking, fear of failure or fear of success. You know what I mean? It can
Mhm.
cause a lot of um untrust. Like, are we trusting ourselves? Are we trusting the people in our lives? Are we always second guessing? So it can cause a lot of anxiety and fear if we have this traumatic event, because are we afraid that it's going to occur again, or do we not know how to handle a certain situation because of that trauma?
Yes.
It could paralyze. People become paralyzed by it.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, environments. For example, I have a friend who grew up in a very high crime community. She worked herself up. She lived in a suburban area. Every 4th of July, she know there's no someone out there shooting, but she's traumatized by the environment when she was brought up. It was a lot of shooting. Cognitively, she knows that it's not, but it still impacts her. So that trauma is lasting unless you get treatment, or you deal with, or you dissect it, or you understand what's triggering you to have that anxiety.
Right. And a lot of times we just kind of stuff it down because we don't want to deal with it because it doesn't feel good, right? So we just want to like distract ourselves or push it down or kind of roll it over and say like, okay, that's just this and it'll pass. But then it will compound upon each other and kind of comes out in different ways. Like, because there will be a lot of physical symptoms. People will start having panic attacks, chest pains, migraines, because we are holding all of that trauma, all of that stress in our body, and we're not releasing it.
And the body keeps the score, right? The body
Yeah.
knows everything. So it would come out. And you may even know, like, why is my arm triggering, or whatever it is.
Right.
The eye jumping. The body keeps the score. That anxiety is going to come out one way or another.
Yes,
exactly.
It is. So in our community, there's a common theme that a lot of us share is lack of trust. So that lack of trust, as you mentioned, the trust factor, that's an anxiety for people when they begin to learn what trust looks like. How do I trust this person? Now, what do you say about, those that have that issue with developing a level of trust?
Yeah, I feel like it is taking a step back and saying, like, where do I think that this was coming from? Like getting really curious. I think that is something that I'm always talking about with my clients, like having that curiosity mindset of like, why is this coming up for me? Where is this coming from? And then who is that person that you may feel safe with? Or is it yourself? Are you trusting yourself and kind of slowly working your way into it? I think if we don't try and we don't practice, then we're not going to be able to change those habits. So it's slowly putting that into work, like opening up. Maybe if I'm starting to trust, if I don't feel safe with the people around me, friends or family, can I go to therapy? Can I see what that's like? Can I open up to my partner or whatever it is, and slowly but surely allow yourself to do that and see that, hey, I am safe.
And I think that's the key component, is the safety piece. Being safe, but safe with self first. If I can trust me and I'm safe, then I can go ahead and trust others. Because I think a lot of the time, we don't trust ourselves. So what do? We go into sort of a panic mode, or that anxiety kicks in. Okay, if I trust myself, what am I trusting myself to do? Yeah. So,
and a lot of people I'm sorry.
No,
a lot
go
of
ahead.
people self-medicate too. With all kinds of
Exactly.
things to relieve that. Like she said, it doesn't feel good to feel anxious. It doesn't feel good to feel on a hyper alert all the time. So people self-medicate.
Yeah, definitely. Panic attacks. Now, panic attacks definitely at times come with chronic anxiety. Some people actually display that as a part of a symptom of theirs, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
So, the panic attacks, talk about that and what that experience is like, that have, those that have told you what that experience is like having a panic attack.
Yeah. So I think a lot of times people will use like panic attack and anxiety attack interchangeably, but they're different. Panic attacks are very physical in nature, right? So you're having that tightness of your chest, like you feel like you can't breathe. Sometimes people end up in the ER thinking they're having a heart attack. It's very, like I said, it's very physical within our body. Whereas like an anxiety attack is like that rumination of like something's wrong. You're having that overwhelming thought where it's over and over again, but it usually ends once that thought ends, like, right? Like once we have that meeting with our boss and we realize they just wanted to tell us like our report is due next week, like then that anxiety attack ends. Whereas a panic attack is really physical. It usually lasts anywhere from like 15 to 20 minutes. And sometimes the onset can be out of nowhere, right? Like it might not be triggered because like you talked about, are we holding stress in our body that's coming up now? So yeah, a panic attack is a lot more physical in nature.
So talk more about what you do to help those work through anxiety.
So for a lot of people, it is starting from that beginning of just identifying that this is what it is, right? Because a lot of times we've lived with this, and we have to identify like what does happen when we feel dysregulated. Are we a fight, flight? You know, are we like a fawn type person where we're just kind of like people pleasing? Like, what does that look like for us? And then like getting curious about like where is that coming from? Where did that stem from? And then starting to change that narrative for ourselves. So like if that narrative is like I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, or I can't do this, or I'm not smart enough, like can we change that? And not people always think like, oh, we need to change it to be like more positive, but not more positive, just more realistic. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying the best that I can, like I'm working
Mm-hmm.
towards this, because everything is progress, right? And that's why I'm always, careful about saying like affirmations. I think affirmations can be really helpful, but if we're not buying in, then they're not helpful. It just kind of brings more shame. So that's why I think it's really important to be realistic and not necessarily have to be like positive. So then starting to challenge those negative thoughts and making more realistic thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And then also bringing in that piece of moving our body, right? Like, are we holding a lot of stress in our body? So what does that look like? Is that, doing grounding techniques where we're, doing like muscle clenching and relaxation so we can kind of learn how things feel in our body and we can kind of take back that control from our anxiety? Are we going out for walks? Are we exercising to kind of release that pent up stress? And then are we also, we have these, long to-do list of do this, do that, but are we actually putting like things that we like to do? Are we putting things that bring us joy on those to-do lists too? So incorporating those things where it's not always just task oriented, because that can, feel really anxious.
Yes. So I was, as you were talking, I was thinking about what we learn about the tape recorder that goes on and on in your head. So I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to talk about the tape recorders sometimes of family members and how they bring about these negative thoughts and
Right.
kind of implanting that.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if you're walking around and you're telling your child you're stupid, you're nothing, you're not going to be anybody, talk about how that also couples with anxiety. Like that can be the foundation of why a person can be so chronically anxious. Can you talk
Oh,
about that?
yeah, 100%. I always tell my clients that a lot of times your inner critic was somebody else's outside voice, right?
That's
was
true.
was it a family member saying those things to you, being passive aggressive? Was it somebody at school? Was it something that you're hearing and now you have taken it on to be like, okay, this must be true about myself? Or maybe it was something that was lacking from you and now it's become this criticism. So it is really important to look, we're going to make mistakes. We are all humans. So I think as parents or just people that are interacting with other people, it's important to take accountability when we are making those mistakes, apologizing, even if it's a parent to a child. I mean,
Yeah.
growing up, that wasn't something that I experienced. Like, can't remember a time where my parent apologized to me for when they did something that wasn't right. But I feel like now as a parent, I try to go back, because that is true. Is my kid going to walk away thinking like, oh, am I not good enough? Like my mom yelled at me, my mom did this, like, because that is going to start to build their character and their core beliefs of like who I am and what the world thinks of me. So
Yes.
it is important to show like, okay, I can take accountability. I am human. I am making mistakes, because you're right.
Mhm.
That stuff does stick with us and it becomes like this narrative that we continue to replay.
And you talked about the word core belief. So, those of you that are listening, core beliefs is exactly what it is. It's a core in your core. You believe the words that is being have been said to you, and it becomes your belief that this is who you are. So, those are the things that, as Amber and I address as therapists, we address that by challenging. As she said, I challenge those thoughts because those thoughts had to come from somewhere else. You were not born with those thoughts. So, therefore, who brought it on to you? So, those are the challenges, that you are going up against is the core belief. So,
Mm-hmm.
as a therapist, what do you do to ensure that you don't have countertransference or transference?
Yeah, so I think I'm a huge advocate for therapy, obviously, as a therapist. I think that therapists should go to therapy if they, I'm not saying they always have to be in it, but I think it's always good to check in with yourself and be honest. If I feel like there is something that's coming up or triggering for me, I have to take account, like, is this something that I can handle, that I have the capacity for? Do I need to refer out? I think that's really real. It always makes me nervous and kind of waves a red flag when I see like a therapist. It's like, I specialize in everything. Like, that's not possible, right?
No.
There are some things that I can't do, and that's okay. Because there are
Yes.
things that I do really well, and then there are
Yes.
things that aren't my forte, and I need to
Mhm.
know my limitations. Everybody has boundaries. So I think it's checking in with my own boundaries,
Yes.
being honest with myself when I do need the extra support and extra help, and not shaming myself and allow myself to get that. Um, and knowing that, like, that's okay that I don't know everything or I can't do everything, because that's
Mhm.
just not possible.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead,
Ava.
Pastor. Go
Dr. Diamond. I'm sorry.
ahead.
So I
Mhm.
have a question. So the therapy sessions is awareness that they have anxiety and what's triggering them, and then the deprogramming of being aware and changing the language in your inner head. And then what's the next step to for the therapy sessions? Like once they start to understand what the process is.
Yeah, so I think once we start to process, then it's talking about like goals, like what do we want for ourselves moving forward? And then what kind of coping skills can we put in our toolbox, right? Because it's super easy when we're in session and things aren't, things are good, things are regulated. But what happens when we get outside? So, like, what tools do we have? So, like, do we have grounding techniques? Do we have reframing? Like, what tools can you use? Do we have effective communication? Can we walk away? So, like, learning how to put those into play when things are actually happening, and then coming back and talking about them, because we're going to mess up, right?
Yes.
That's how we're learning. We kind of learn, like, hey, this worked for me, this didn't work for me, because there are so many different types of coping skills, and just because one thing works for me might not work for you. And I think that's really important too, to kind of figure out what's good for me, and like, what do I want to like throw out.
Yes. Yes. So, what message do you have for our Black and Brown community when it comes to therapy and addressing anxiety and or trauma?
Yeah, I think that if you are struggling, what is the purpose of continuing to struggle in silence? You know what I mean? I know that being vulnerable and being open seems scary and could seem like that's not for me, because there is a lot of stigma around it.
Mm-hmm.
But my question is always like, well, what do you have to lose? Right? Like,
Mhm.
if you go and you don't like it, like, okay, then you went and you didn't like it. But just like finding a partner or finding a doctor or finding the right sneaker, right? Sometimes you have to try on a couple to figure out what's best for you. And I think like that same as a therapist, trying to find somebody that matches you, that has that rapport. I think that's the most important part of therapy, is finding that good match, that person that you feel comfortable with. And once you do that, like, you're off to the races, like, because then you have somebody that you feel like supports you and gets you. So what do you have to lose by giving it a try?
Right. Exactly. So, provide your information for those that are listening, and just, let them know how your practice is too. Talk about your practice a little bit and then how to get in contact with you.
Yeah, sure. So I have a practice in for all of New Jersey. It's completely virtual right now. So I'm doing all online sessions. It's called Vitality Behavioral Health. You can find me at vitalitybehavioralhealth.com. I specialize in working with women with anxiety disorders and trauma. So those are two of my specialties. Like, she said, I have a certification in trauma therapy. Um, I also have a membership service called the Anxiety Lab, where I work specifically with women who are struggling with anxiety, teaching them coping skills. It's a community, so it's like an online private community where we have workshops monthly, and we, speak. What's it called? We speak openly about like what's going on with us and learning coping skills for your toolbox. So yeah, theanxietylab.com or vitalitybehavioralhealth.com is the best ways to reach me.
And are you taking new clients at this time?
So I just have a couple spots that are opening up at the end of this month.
Okay.
So, but that's very, I feel like that goes quickly. So if that is something that you want to do, reach out to me and let me know, because right now I feel like it is a high time for people to go to therapy.
Yeah.
And I know that can be really frustrating, especially when you're like trying to find somebody for the first time. So I always say, like, if someone does reach out to me and I can't help you personally, I always make it my mission to help you find somebody else.
Yes, that's important.
Yeah.
Definitely. So we thank you for coming on. We hope to have you come on again
Yeah.
to talk about other topics in mental health. And yes, as Amber said, this is Mental Health Month awareness. So, just look for some stuff because she gets on Facebook and she actually do blurps, check her out, and she talks about like realistic things that are going on, even with herself. So that's cool. You get to see her. She's human. She's showing you, hey, it's just not you. It's just me. It's me too. So, I just wanted to make sure that we thank you tremendously for coming on tonight and
Great
addressing
information.
the topic, and you provided some great information. And you can hang on if you like, because we're going to just kind of shift gears a little bit. We're going to talk about our community. What do we call it? The community information line. And what we do is in that segment, we talk about historical Black colleges and universities. So it's very important that we provide this information to our Black and Brown community and those that consider themselves of color.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided for this week's topic, we have Albany State University. Now, Albany State University was founded in 1903, and the founder was Joseph Winthrop Holly. And guess what? He was an ex-slave. I was like, wow, this is something else. Just, to know that you came from an enslaved person to being a president of opening up a university, which is outstanding. So, and right now, the current body with undergrads and non-traditional is about 6,500 students. Now, some notable alumni. For 2 years, Rick Ross actually attended that school and he played football there.
Oh.
Yeah, who would have known, right? So I was like, wow, Rick Ross. So I was like, kind of intrigued by that. And then Joe Marie Payton, the actress off of Family Matters.
Yes.
She attended this college as well. So you never know who has attended these colleges. And yes, we may provide you with alumni that you may connect with. Okay, so even for the younger people that are listening, this segment is very important for you because when you're selecting a college, you want to go to a college you can identify with. Okay, you can go to any college you want to, but it's nothing wrong with trying the HBCU. You can always transfer if it's not for you. Simply what Amber said. If you can't find a therapist that you like, you can always switch. Same thing with college.
Try another one.
Yes, you try another one. And we give this to you because it's very important. All family members, so they know that HBCUs are starting to become very important and vital. And at first, it wasn't like that. It was, okay, these are just Black colleges, but you're setting out a lot of people into this world that are doing some extraordinary things. So this is our reasoning for making sure we're highlighting these colleges. And tonight, I wanted to talk about Black history. We're stepping back into time. So we got the Black history moment. This moment, we chose Mamie Till Mobley. She was chosen because she was not only an educator, but an activist. She was an activist for her son, Emmett Till. So anyone that knows her story, know that she sent her son away for the summer with her uncle to Money, Mississippi, and he never came back. Okay, the story has been told so many different ways. I would, encourage anyone to watch the women's movement, which was the actual documentary or the show that they had of Mamie. And then there are documentaries that are out that she is talking about the entire experience of what happened to her son. And, if we were to go back and loop this around to mental health, think about the trauma her as a mother went through. All three of us are moms. Really, to go through an experience like that. And this is where I talk about complex trauma. You're Black, you're a woman. Trust is hard. So now I have to trust that I can put my son on a train with my uncle, his cousins, go down and come back. See, that's a trust thing. And what she said too is she felt guilty once she let him go and that happened to him. She owned what happened to her son as her fault.
Wow.
So this is very, very traumatic for her, and I can only imagine what her son felt like going through that. A young man who honestly did not do what people said he did. He actually had a stuttering issue. So I want to be very clear on how she described helping her son calm down from anxiety, because that's what he had. He stuttered, and what she would do is tell him, whistle to calm yourself down. And that was what was happening. So whatever interaction he had with the lady in the store, his nerves must have kicked in.
Yeah.
And when he came out of the store, the assumption was he whistled at her, but he did not. He was trying to calm himself down. So this is something that, Amber talked about tonight, coping skills. That was a coping skill for him, but it was used to kill him.
I'm sure the whole community had trauma after that, and fear and anxiety. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, we're all feeling collective trauma, in these past, years. But, I feel like everybody was like, oh, there's trauma. Like once 2020 happened, it was like, no, we've been feeling that for a while. But absolutely, these communities, like our community has.
Yeah.
Yes. Definitely. Yes. And it does. When we think about our community as a whole, African-American community, I'm just going to focus on us. Once something does happen like that, yes, the anxiety goes through the whole community. The fear sets in. If I go out my door, will I come back?
Right.
Okay.
If we get pulled over by the police, then we law-abiding citizens who go to work every day. But the anxiety level, knowing that what could happen, like what this interaction, what's the end result? You're traumatized.
Yeah.
You're traumatized. Who wants to live like that? But unfortunately, we have inherited these feelings because as little children, do you know we are taught to operate in this system that we call America? Okay, you can't say certain things. Be careful when you're driving. Put your hand on the steering wheel. Come on, think about this now. I have a son. Amber, you have a son. My son is way older than your son, but at the age of 16, I had to tell him, when you're driving, you put your hand on that steering wheel and don't you move until they tell you to move. Why do we have to do that? But can you imagine the anxiety? Okay, will I be going home? Would I say the wrong thing? It's just it's just an ongoing repeated behavior, because if we go from Emmett Till, then you need to move on to George Floyd and then Ahmaud Arbery.
And thousands in between.
And thousands in between. The behavior is constantly mimicked, but in different ways. So, America, how do you tell us not to be anxious?
That's so true. Walking through the department store, you kind of watched a little bit more than, and you have a defense mechanism. I'm not doing anything. So we constantly hypersensitive, on edge.
Yes.
I think that's the reality of it too. You can't say that it's not real. You can't say that like, oh, this is just fear. Like that fear is realistic. Like we've seen it. So how do you live and push through? At what cost? So there's a lot of gray, and I think we have to be honest about that. Yes, we deserve to live our lives and do great things. At the same time, are we still looking over our shoulder? So where do we meet?
Where do we meet?
It's exhausting too, as a Black community as a whole. It's just exhausting to live, always on hyper sensitive, or making sure if you're in a meeting in the boardroom, you don't say anything in a hard or aggressive way. You don't, God forbid, you be deemed as the angry Black woman. So it's always, you always constantly using that narrative in your mind to behave a certain way.
Right.
Yes. And this is what was taught to us. How do we behave when we're in different situations? So unfortunately, and those who have lost their family members to that type of violence that we just described, there's nothing that we can say or do to help you heal from such a void in that way. But all we can say is, as you take your steps towards your healing, look at what that healing looks like, because it does look different for everybody. You'll never forget the person that you lost, but you can connect with them by keeping them vital in your heart and in your mind. And that's all you can do so you can move forward in your life, because it's very easy, as the resume queen said, to become paralyzed. So we have to be careful on what that looks like for us. But, just take every day, step by step, and try to move forward. So one more time, Amber, if you could provide your information before we end for tonight.
Sure. You can reach me at vitalitybehavioralhealth.com is my practice. And then my membership service for women with anxiety is the Anxiety Lab. And like she said, I'm on Facebook. I'm active on Instagram. So you can find me in all those places.
And we thank you so much for coming on board with us tonight. We look forward to speaking with you again on another wonderful topic. And we may just focus on just trauma itself, women and trauma. And we would love to have you back on for that. So those of you that listen to us tonight, thank you so much. Resume Queen, do you have any last remarks before we are done for this evening?
I just want to say thank you to Amber for bringing light on a situation that plagues our community and being a resource for people to help heal all the trauma that they've gone through. So thank you for the service that you provide for our community.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And thank you to our followers and our listeners. Thank you for joining us on the couch. You have a wonderful week. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Take care of yourself. And like always, be safe. Have a good night.
Have a nice
Bye-bye.
night.
Thank you for joining on the couch this evening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and if you want to contact Dr. Diamond, you may reach her at candidconversations.dr.d@gmail.com. Have a great evening, and we will see you on the next show.